Welcome to Talk Treatises.
It's really good to be here.
For those of you joining us for the first time, or if you're a veteran who's been with us since the beginning, let's reorient ourselves a bit.
Right.
This is the Deep Dive. We are a professional philosophy and classic literature discussion show. And our mandate here is deceptively simple.
Yeah, we take the texts that really shaped human thought.
Exactly. The heavy hitters, the controversial manifestos, the quiet revolutions.
Yeah.
And we dissect them.
We aren't here to just give you the Wikipedia summary.
No, we aren't here to skim the surface. We are here to get our hands dirty with the source material itself.
And today, we are getting our hands very dirty because we are dealing with a text that is, it's arguably one of the most dangerous pieces of writing in American history.
Dangerous.
Yeah, dangerous in the most potent, transformative sense of the word.
Dangerous is a really good word for it. We are unpacking Henry David Thoreau's 1849 essay. Most of you probably know it as On the Duty of Civil Disobedience. Though for the purists out there, it was originally titled Resistance to Civil Government.
And before we even crack the spine of this thing, before we look at a single sentence, we really have to look at the world Thoreau was living in.
We do. Because this isn't a text written in a vacuum.
Exactly. It's not abstract philosophy written up in some ivory tower. It is a reaction. It is a scream of frustration.
So it's the late 1840s, Concord, Massachusetts.
Right. And to understand the anger and the incredible clarity in this text, you have to understand that the two giant shadows looming over Thoreau's shoulder while he was writing it.
The first big shadow is the Mexican-American War.
Which is often kind of glossed over in high school history as just a phase of manifest destiny.
Yeah, just lines moving on a map.
Right. But for the intellectuals of New England in the 1840s, this was a moral catastrophe. Thoreau and many others viewed it as a pure land grab.
An act of aggression.
Exactly. An act of aggression by a large, powerful nation against a smaller, weaker one, driven entirely by this desire to expand territory.
And that territory expansion feeds directly into the second shadow, which is the institution of slavery.
They are inextricably linked. You really cannot talk about the Mexican War without talking about slavery.
Because the expansion into the West, seizing those territories, was largely about creating new slave states.
To balance the power in Congress against the free states of the North, yes.
So Thoreau is sitting in Concord looking at his government.
The government he pays taxes to, the government that claims to represent liberty.
And he sees it waging an unjust war to propagate a profoundly immoral institution.
Which brings us to the intellectual problem at the very heart of this deep dive.
Right. It's a tension that I think everyone feels at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. We feel it today when we just scroll through the news.
But Thoreau articulates it with this razor-sharp precision. The question is, how does a moral individual exist within a state that commits immoral acts in their name?
It is the ultimate question of citizenship. Is it enough to just disagree?
Right. Is it enough to cast a vote once every 4 years and say, well, I hope the good guys win?
And then just go back to your job.
Exactly. Or does citizenship require something more visceral? Does it require a bone in the back, as Thoreau might say?
Well, Thoreau's answer is, well, it's not subtle.
Not at all.
No.
If I had to boil this entire essay down to a one-sentence thesis, and we were going to spend the rest of our time here unpacking this, it would be this. The authority of the government is impure. The individual conscience is the only true sovereign. And when the law violates the conscience, the just man must become a counter-friction to the machine of the state.
Counter-friction. That is the key image we're going to keep coming back to today.
It's highly mechanical.
It's abrasive. It's not about greasing the wheels. It's about stopping them completely.
So let's start where he starts. This is segment one. The nature of government and the majority.
Right.
He opens with a line that I think ends up on a lot of bumper stickers, usually by people who maybe haven't read the rest of the essay.
Oh, for sure.
He says, I heartily accept the motto that government is best, which governs least.
It is a very famous opening. It sounds like a standard libertarian rallying cry.
Yeah.
But then he immediately escalates it. He doesn't stop, at least.
He takes it further.
He says he believes that government is best, which governs not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Now we have to pause here. Is he calling for total anarchy? Because that sounds like he wants to abolish the state entirely tomorrow.
It's a nuance that definitely gets lost. He isn't necessarily saying burn it all down tomorrow.
Yeah.
He's saying that in an ideal world where men are truly ready to govern themselves through their conscience, we wouldn't need the external machinery of the state. He calls government an expedient.
Let's unpack that word, expedient.
Okay.
That's a word we don't really use much in that specific context anymore.
Right, an expedient is basically a means to an end, a tool, a shortcut. He's saying government is just a device we use to get things done. It's like a hammer or a shovel.
But he argues that most of the time, it's actually an inexpedient.
Yes, it stops being a helpful tool and starts being a massive obstacle.
He uses this fantastic metaphor of the wooden gun.
I love that one. He compares the American government to a wooden gun.
It's such a striking visual. Think about it.
Right.
A wooden gun looks like a real weapon. It looks powerful from a distance. You can drill with it. You can march around with it.
But if the people actually used it against each other in earnest, if they tried to fire a real bullet through it, it would just split.
It would shatter.
Oh,
So the obvious question is, why do we have it?
if it's basically a toy, why do we respect it so much?
Right.
Thoreau says we keep it because the people actually need it.
Need the illusion.
Exactly. We
Yeah.
need the complicated machinery. We need to hear the din and the noise of it to satisfy our idea that we are being governed.
It's purely psychological.
We aren't ready to be free, so we build this noisy, complicated machine to make us feel safe.
It's like a security blanket that makes loud official noises.
Precisely. And he goes on to list the things this wooden gun fails to do. We give the government credit for all these grand achievements, for building the nation, for the booming economy, but Thoreau just shuts that down.
I just listed out. He says, it does not keep the country free.
Right.
It does not settle the West.
Yes.
It does not educate.
Which is a bold claim.
Very bold, especially the settling the West part. The government literally drew the maps and sent the armies to do exactly that.
But Thoreau's point is really about the spirit of the achievement. He argues that the character of the American people accomplished those things.
The individuals.
Yes, the energy, the drive, the innovation, that came from the individual people. He argues that the government often just got in the way.
He mentions that trade and commerce are like India rubber. They have to literally bounce over the obstacles that legislators put in their way.
He even compares legislators to those mischievous persons who put obstructions on the railroads.
Which, by the way, was a serious crime back then.
A very serious crime. He is putting lawmakers in the exact same moral category as saboteurs. He's looking at them and saying, we succeeded despite you, not because of you.
So if the government is just this obstructionist machine, why on earth do we let the majority rule? This is the part of the text that I think challenges our modern democratic sensibilities the most, because you and I are taught from kindergarten that majority rule is the fairest way to decide things.
It's the absolute bedrock of democracy.
But Thoreau says, not so much.
He completely destroys the moral legitimacy of majority rule in about 3 sentences. He asks a very uncomfortable question.
He says, why is the majority permitted to rule?
Is it because they are most likely to be right?
No.
Is it because it's fairest to the minority?
No.
It is simply because they are physically the strongest.
It's just might makes right.
Exactly. It's a basic head count of who has the most muscle. If you have 51% of the population, you can physically overpower the 49%.
But that doesn't mean you are right.
Not at all. It just means you can beat them up. And Thoreau asks this devastating question. Can there not be a government in which majorities do not virtually decide right and wrong, but conscience?
That is the big pivot point. Conscience versus the ballot box.
He argues that we should be men first and subjects afterward. The law is not the ultimate moral authority.
This is such a crucial distinction for him. If the law says, go catch that fugitive slave, and your conscience says, this is a human being who deserves freedom, the law must lose.
He says, the only obligation which I have a right to assume is to do at any time what I think right.
Which sounds incredibly noble, but I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Isn't that just a recipe for utter chaos? If everyone just follows their own private definition of right, don't we end up with total anarchy? I mean, what if my conscience says I should drive 100 miles an hour through a school zone?
That is the classic counter-argument. But Thoreau is operating from a very specific philosophical framework here, transcendentalism. He believes that the conscience isn't just a fleeting whim. It isn't just what I feel like doing today. He believes the conscience is a direct link to a higher universal truth.
A divine truth.
Yes. He believes that if every man deeply, truly consulted his conscience, they would actually align on the big moral issues. He trusts the individual moral compass way more than the collective machinery.
So he thinks the chaos of conscience is still fundamentally better than the order of injustice.
Exactly. He would much rather have a messy, loud pursuit of justice than a very well-ordered, quiet system of oppression.
Which moves us right into our second segment. Men, machines, and the hierarchy of service.
Right.
Because this idea of men first, subjects later, leads him to a very dark view of the people who actually do follow the law blindly.
This is one of the most vivid, visceral parts of the text. He describes a visit to the Navy Yard. He sees a Marine.
And he doesn't see a patriot.
No, he doesn't see a hero protecting the nation.
He calls him a mere shadow and reminiscence of humanity. A man buried under arms.
Buried under arms with funeral accompaniments. It's practically a zombie movie description. He sees these soldiers marching off to war.
Wars they might personally completely disagree with.
Wars that might violate their own common sense, and yet they march. They have totally resigned their conscience to the legislator.
So Thoreau categorizes the servants of the state into three distinct classes.
It's a hierarchy.
It's almost like Dante's circles, but for citizenship.
That's a great way to put it. At the very bottom, you have the bodies.
These are the machines.
The standing army, the militia, the jailers, the constables. He says they serve the state strictly with their bodies. They put themselves on a level with wood and earth.
He's brutal here. He says they command the same respect as a straw man or a lump of dirt.
Because they have completely abdicated their moral agency. If you just do what you are told without question, you are not a man, you are a tool, you are a shovel.
You are a musket.
You are not a human being.
Then, a step up from that, you have the heads.
The politicians, the legislators, the lawyers, the ministers.
They serve with their minds.
They are the architects of the system. But Thoreau points out that because they rarely make moral distinctions, they are just managing the system. They are just as likely to serve the devil as God.
Without even intending it.
Exactly. They are highly efficient, but they are morally blind.
They are the managers keeping the trains running, but they never ask where the train is actually going.
And finally, the third class, the highest class, the consciences.
The heroes.
Patriots, martyrs, reformers. They serve the state with their consciences. And this is the great paradox. Because they serve with their conscience, because they are actually looking at where the train is going.
They necessarily resist the state for the most part.
Right. And the state treats them as enemies.
Because the state doesn't want a conscience.
No, it wants a machine. So the people who love the country enough to try to actually fix it morally are treated as the ultimate enemies of the state, while the lumps of dirt who march blindly are called good citizens.
Now, in this section, Thoreau takes aim at a specific philosopher.
Yeah.
William Paley.
We really need to talk about Paley.
We do, because he isn't exactly a household name anymore. But in 1849, Paley was the absolute gold standard for political philosophy.
William Paley was a British clergyman and philosopher, essentially the father of common sense utilitarianism in this context. His most famous work on this was about the duty of submission to civil government.
And what exactly was his core argument?
Paley argues for pure expediency. He says, look, civil unrest is bad. Revolutions are bloody, they are expensive, they disrupt everything. So you should obey the government as long as the public inconvenience of resisting is greater than the public grievance you are trying to fix.
This is just a math problem.
Exactly. You weigh the cost of the rebellion against the cost of the bad law.
It sounds rational.
Yeah.
It sounds exactly like something a modern centrist politician would say on Sunday morning television. Don't rock the boat unless the boat is already sinking.
And Thoreau absolutely hates this. He despises it with every fiber of his being.
How does he counter it?
He counters with the drowning man metaphor. This is so crucial for understanding Thoreau's absolute morality. He says, if I have unjustly wrestled a plank from a drowning man, I must return it to him, even if I drown myself.
That is a very high bar.
It is the highest possible bar. Paley would look at that and say, well, if you give the plank back, you die. And that's very inconvenient for you, so you should keep the plank.
Right.
But Thoreau says, no, justice must be done, cost what it may.
And he applies this directly to 1849 America. Massachusetts is holding on to the plank of slavery and the Mexican War.
Right. He says Massachusetts must do justice to the slave and to Mexico, even if it costs them their very existence as a people. Even if the state of Massachusetts has to be wiped completely off the map, you do not keep the plank.
You do not build your prosperity on the back of a drowning man.
Never.
That brings us to how we actually affect change. Segment 3, voting action, and the good citizen. Because I think a lot of people read this, or they look at the world today and they think, okay, I'll just vote for the anti-slavery candidate. I'll vote for the good guys. That's my duty.
And Thoreau says that is absolutely not enough. In fact, he insults the very concept of voting.
He calls it a sort of gaming.
Like playing checkers or backgammon, with just a slight moral tinge to it.
He says even voting for the right is doing nothing for it.
That's the line that hits me every single time I read it. Even voting for the right is doing nothing for it. It is merely expressing a feeble desire that the right should prevail.
You are basically betting on the right horse, but you aren't actually doing the work to make the horse win.
You are leaving it entirely up to the majority to decide.
He's really targeting the passive majority here. The people who sit comfortably in Concord and say, oh, slavery is terrible, but they don't do anything about it.
He describes them reading the prices current, which is basically the stock market tickers of the day, along with the latest news from Mexico, and then just falling asleep over both.
They prioritize their comfort and their commerce over their conscience.
They treat the war and the market as just news to be consumed.
He has this biting description of the modern American male in this section. He calls him an odd fellow.
Yes, the odd fellow. He says the American has dwindled into this character who completely lacks self-reliance. His first concern is the almshouse.
Social Security, basically.
And the Widows and Orphans Fund. He ventures to live only by the aid of the mutual insurance company.
It's a harsh critique of safety culture.
Yeah.
We are so afraid of risk that we neuter our own moral power. We are more worried about our insurance premiums than our souls.
We want to be safe more than we want to be right. And Thoreau finds that utterly pathetic.
So what is the call to action? If voting is just a game, and being an odd fellow is pathetic, what does Thoreau actually want you to do?
He uses the phrase washing hands. He says, look, you don't have to devote your entire life to eradicating every single wrong. You have your own life to live.
Thoreau was busy. He had huckleberries to pick.
Right. He wasn't a full-time activist. He freely admits that.
That's an important distinction for the listener. He isn't telling everyone to drop everything and become a full-time martyr or a revolutionary leader.
No. But, he says, it is your duty to at least wash your hands of the injustice, meaning do not give it practical support.
Meaning do not pay for it.
Exactly. Don't be the hypocrite who refuses to go to war but happily pays taxes to hire a substitute who does go to war. Don't be the northern abolitionist who relies on cheap southern cotton.
And here comes the central mechanical metaphor of the essay, the one that gives us the title of our episode today.
Let your life be a counter-friction to stop the machine.
Let's visualize that for a second.
The state is a machine. It grinds along. Injustice is the friction, the heat, the wearing down of the gears.
And usually we just let it grind. We say, well, that's just how the system works. It's unfortunate, but what can you do?
Thoreau says, you throw your body into the gears. If the injustice requires you to be the agent of injustice to another, you break the law. You use your life to physically stop the machine.
Which brings us to segment 4. The prison narrative. Because this isn't just a theory for Thoreau. He actually did it. He threw his body into the gears.
He absolutely walked the walk. He refused to pay his poll tax for 6 years. And even before that, he refused to pay the church tax.
I love the church tax story. It's such a great prequel to the jail story. He basically signed off from the church.
He did. He wrote a formal letter saying, "Know all men by these presents that I, Henry Thoreau, do not wish to be regarded as a member of any incorporated society which I have not joined."
He unbundled himself from the church.
He said, I didn't sign up for this, so I'm not paying for it. And then he tried to do the exact same thing with the state.
So he finally gets arrested. It's July 1846. He's just walking into town to get a shoe fixed at the cobbler.
A very mundane errand.
And Sam Staples, the local constable who is also the tax collector, and the jailer, stops him.
Staples says, "Henry, you haven't paid your tax." Thoreau says, "I know." Staples says, "Well, I'm going to have to lock you up."
And Staples actually offered to pay it for him, right?
He did. Staples was a nice guy. He said, "I'll pay it if you're hard up." But Thoreau said, "It's not about the money, Sam." So off to jail he went.
Now, the way he writes about this night in jail is fascinating. You'd expect a rant about the terrible injustice of the legal system or complaints about the cold floor.
But it's almost a travelogue.
It's a complete shift in perspective.
He walks into that cell, the door clangs shut, and suddenly he sees his town, Concord, through a completely different lens. He says it was like traveling into a far country.
He saw the village in the light of the Middle Ages.
He talks about looking through the grating of the window,
He realizes that the jail is actually the only place where the town's secret history is circulated. It's the real gossip center.
He feels like he is finally seeing the town as it truly is, naked and unvarnished.
And he meets his roommate,
A man accused of burning a barn.
though Thoreau decides the guy probably just fell asleep smoking a pipe in the barn and it was an accident.
He calls him a clever man. They chat, they look out the window together, they listen to the town clock strike. Thoreau describes it as incredibly peaceful.
He said he felt more free inside the jail than the people walking outside.
That's the key paradox of this entire section. The people outside are prisoners of the state because they are terrified to disobey. Thoreau is inside, behind bars, but his conscience is clear. So he is the one who is truly free.
The walls are just stone. They can't confine his spirit.
Exactly.
And then the release.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of an anticlimax, honestly.
It really is. Someone probably, his Aunt Maria, historically speaking, heard he was in jail, put a shawl over her head to hide her identity, ran down to the jailer's house, and paid the tax.
And Thoreau was actually annoyed by this interference.
He was furious. He didn't want to be bailed out. He wanted to remain the counter-friction. But Sam Staples came in the next morning and said, "You're free to go."
Thoreau actually hesitated. He didn't want to leave.
But he gets kicked out of his own jail cell. And the transition back to normal life is beautiful.
He goes straight back to the shoemaker, gets his mended shoe, puts it on, and goes right back to huckleberry picking.
But notice the contrast he draws there. He joins a huckleberry party in a field on one of the highest hills, 2 miles off, and he writes, "The state was nowhere to be seen."
Nature is free. The state is a trap.
And he learns a profound lesson about the nature of the state from that single night. He realizes the state is half-witted.
Half-witted, that's such a stinging insult for a government.
It is. He realizes the state is physically strong but intellectually weak. It thinks it can punish him by locking up his body.
But Thoreau's mind, his conscience, they are completely free. They walked right out of that jail cell.
He compares the state to a timid woman with her silver spoons. Terrified of losing its possessions, unable to tell its true friends from its foes, he says, "I lost all my remaining respect for it and pitied it."
He pitied the government. That is an incredible power move.
It is the ultimate power move. You simply cannot oppress a man who pities you.
This realization leads us directly to the root of the state's power. Segment 5. Money, property, and Daniel Webster.
Right.
Thoreau has a very specific view on wealth. He states, the more money, the less virtue.
It's a direct mathematical equation for him. Money comes between a man and his objects.
Explain that dynamic for a second.
If you have money, you don't have to build your own house. You just pay someone. You don't have to walk. You pay for a ride.
It removes you from the direct experience of life.
It insulates you. And crucially, it binds you to the state.
The rich man is always sold to the institution that makes him rich.
Exactly. The state protects your property. Therefore, if you have a lot of property, you are terrified of the state failing.
You won't rebel because you have way too much to lose.
The poor man has nothing to lose, so he can afford to be brave. The rich man is a coward because of his assets.
Thoreau anticipates the classic biblical argument about rendering unto Caesar. Render therefore to Caesar that which is Caesar's.
He flips it completely. He says, sure, if you trade in the state's coin, if you carry Caesar's money in your pocket and rely on Caesar's royals and Caesar's protection, then you are a man of the state. You owe him.
But Thoreau implies, I don't want Caesar's coin.
I don't want his advantages, so I don't owe him anything at all.
He then turns his sights on a specific contemporary figure, Daniel Webster. Now, we need to be fair to Webster here for a moment. He was a giant of the era. He was the defender of the Constitution.
He was. Webster was a brilliant orator and an incredibly skilled lawyer, and Thoreau acknowledges that. He calls him great.
But he dismantles his wisdom. He says Webster is a man of prudence, not wisdom.
What's the core distinction there?
Prudence is about managing what already exists. It's about consistency.
Right. Webster wants to keep the Union together at all costs. He wants to uphold the Constitution as it is written.
But Thoreau says Webster is unable to take a fact out of its political relations.
Webster looks at slavery and says, well, it's in the original compact. The Constitution allows it, so let it stand.
Right. Webster is a lawyer. His truth is what is written in the law.
But Thoreau is a philosopher. His truth is what is right in the eyes of God.
Thoreau says Webster is a follower, not a leader. He is just blindly following the men of 1787. He isn't thinking for himself. He's thinking for the system.
He can't even imagine a world better than the Constitution, but Thoreau can.
So where does this leave us? If the current system is so deeply flawed, where are we going? Segment 6, the evolution of the state.
Thoreau takes a very long view of history here. He sees a distinct progression.
We went from absolute monarchy,
where the king is everything,
to limited monarchy,
where the king has rules,
to democracy,
where the people rule.
And then Thoreau asks this incredibly radical question. Is democracy the last improvement possible?
Is this it? Have we peaked as a civilization?
He says no. He envisions a step even further. A state that recognizes the individual as a higher and independent power.
There will never be a free and enlightened state until the state recognizes the individual as a higher and independent power.
And he has this beautiful, almost horticultural image at the very end of the essay. He imagines a state that can afford to be truly just to all men.
A state that would not mind if a few people live completely aloof from it.
People who just opt out.
People who don't pay taxes, don't vote, don't use the courts, but still fulfill all their basic duties as good neighbors.
He says if the state allowed this fruit to simply drop off the tree, it would not destroy the tree.
It would prepare the way for a still more perfect state.
It's a vision of a truly voluntary society, a society based entirely on conscience, not coercion.
It is. It's a beautiful, peaceful anarchy.
Which is a perfect transition to our final segment. As you know, we like to take these classic texts and stress test them. We call it thought experiments.
Disclaimer time. The following scenarios are for entertainment and educational purposes only. They are designed to stress test the philosophical framework we've just discussed. Please do not try to overthrow the government based on our discussion today.
Please don't. But let's play with Thoreau's ideas. Thought experiment number 1. The subscription state, or the Netflix of nations.
I love this one. Thoreau's core complaint was basically, I didn't sign up for this.
He says, I did not see why the schoolmaster should be taxed to support the priest. He only wants to pay for what he believes in.
So imagine a future where citizenship is entirely unbundled. There is no lump sum income tax. Instead, you have a digital dashboard. You log in and you see the menu.
Roads and bridges. $50 a month, click.
Fire department, $20 a month, click.
Foreign war in a country you can't find on a map, $100 a month.
Uncheck.
Corporate subsidies for oil companies.
Hard uncheck.
Public libraries.
Double check. I'll gladly pay double.
So in this subscription state, the government only has the budget for the things people actually conscientiously support.
It perfectly satisfies Thoreau's demand for individual financial consent. If you are a pacifist, you simply don't fund the army.
If you are an environmentalist, you don't fund the highway expansion. You fund the high-speed rail.
But let's stress test it. I'm going to be Daniel Webster here for a second.
Do it.
What happens to the common good? What about the highly unpopular but completely necessary things? Sewage treatment? Or what about defense?
If 40% of the country are pacifists and opt out of the defense bundle, and then we get invaded, does the state just collapse?
That's the classic free rider problem. If I can benefit from the Army's protection without paying for it, I might just keep my money.
But Thoreau would argue, if the war is truly necessary, if the defense is truly just, the people will gladly pay for it.
So it forces the government to essentially have a much better marketing department.
It forces the government to sell its policies directly to the conscience of the people.
If you can't convince me it's moral, you don't get my money. It turns the citizen from a subject into a customer or an investor.
Or does the market for injustice just completely dry up? Thoreau would argue that if nobody subscribes to slavery or unjust war, the state literally cannot afford to do it.
Exactly. It would be an instant referendum on every single policy. Sorry, Mr. President, nobody subscribed to your invasion this month, so the tanks are out of gas.
I feel like there is a crypto startup working on exactly this right now.
Almost certainly. Which leads us perfectly to experiment number 2, the algorithmic conscience.
We are taking Thoreau's counter-friction and making it completely automated.
Thoreau said, let your life be a counter-friction to stop the machine. In 1849, that meant physically going to jail. It was slow, it was analog, it relied on one man making a scene.
Today, we have smart contracts. We have programmable money. Imagine a scenario where citizens hold their assets in a Thoreau wallet.
This wallet has a strict protocol, a conscience protocol. It is connected to a decentralized oracle, a source of truth that constantly monitors government actions.
So let's say the government declares an illegal war, or they pass a law that clearly violates civil liberties, or they are caught in a massive corruption scandal.
The oracle flags it.
And instantly, simultaneously, 10 million Thoreau wallets freeze. The tax payments stop immediately. The liquidity dries up. The government accounts are instantly locked out of accessing the citizens' resources.
It's a flash mob of civil disobedience. It's not just one guy in a jail cell in Concord. It's a synchronized, automated financial strike.
The machinery of the state is stopped literally by the machinery of the people.
Is this the peaceable revolution he talked about?
In a way, yes. Thoreau asked for a way to resist that didn't involve violence. He said, if the tax gatherer asks me, what shall I do? My answer is, resign your office.
This digital version forces the state to resign its bad behavior instantly.
But the risk?
Instant anarchy, total collapse. If the algorithm gets it wrong, or if the people program it to be too sensitive, the government could collapse overnight.
The ambulances stop running, the traffic lights go dark, the water stops pumping.
It proves Thoreau's point, though. It shows that the power really does lie with the people if they only had the mechanism to use it collectively.
We have the mechanism now. We just don't have the bone in the back that Thoreau talked about. We're still odd fellows worried about our insurance.
That is a very sobering thought. We have the tech, but maybe we don't have the guts.
We lack the friction.
So let's bring it all home. Why does this 1849 essay matter to the person listening to this deep dive right now? Why should they care about Henry Thoreau and his huckleberries?
Because the machine is still running. The issues change. It's not the Mexican-American War anymore, but the fundamental tension between conscience and law is eternal.
We are all making compromises every single day. We are all paying for things we deeply don't believe in. We are all part of systems we completely disagree with.
Thoreau challenges us to stop being good citizens and start being good men and good women.
He challenges us to really look at where our money goes and where our true allegiance lies, and to ask ourselves a very hard question. Are we lubricating the machine? Or are we the counter-friction?
That is a question worth asking. And that is it for this deep dive into civil disobedience.
The link to the full text is in the bio. Read it. It's much shorter than you think and much sharper than you expect.
Thanks for listening to Talk Treatises. We'll see you in the next text.
Stay frictionful.
Goodbye.